Yo, what is going on, guys? It's Colo Rebels here, back with another Scarlet Violet video, and today we're going to be doing our final updates to our regulationH tier list. So today is December 5th, which means it is exactly 1 month ago since we have done a tier list update for regulationH. So the list that you see here, this was done on November 5th. So I wanted to do this one last time because, again, this is the final month of the format, and we have the last upcoming regionals for Toronto next weekend. So I wanted to at least do this to give you guys a little bit of time to prepare and give you some up-to-date information on maybe things you may want to play, maybe things you don't want to play, or how to prepare against. Again, it's just all useful information, especially if it's your first time, right? And, you know, soaking up information is always going to be good. It'll help you through team building. It'll help with your battles. Just always don't stop absorbing information. Okay. So like always, what I always like to do with this is I'm going to move stuff up and down depending on how the meta has progressed since that 1 month. And even before that, I'm going to run through the tiers just to explain how they all work. So obviously here at the top, we have the S tier. This is what I call the best of the best, also known as, you know, meta defining Pokemon that are super popular right now. Always top, you know, 6 in usage, ideally, with every regional graphic. You know, makes a lot of sense because they're very strong. Best stats, best abilities, really good support options also. Again, the S tier, best of the best. A tier, this is what we call the strong and consistent tier. So even though they're not quite in the S tier, they also are very important Pokemon, you know, within their own archetype, depending on what you're trying to play. Also very good stats, good abilities, and just overall very consistent results all across the board throughout regional and ladder play. After that, then I took the B tier and I split it up into the high B tier and then the low B tier. High B tiers, this is what we call just like solid options. Again, maybe not as good as your A tier, you know, maybe not as good of stats, or maybe good stats but not that amazing of an ability, but still very good solid Pokemon that you'll find on a good amount of teams. Then you have the low B tier where, you know, again, this is just one tier above the C tier. Again, these are also like very good Pokemon, but they need a little bit more support than some of the others. Whereas like the A tiers or even the S tiers, they're very splashable. You can use them on a lot of different teams because they're very flexible. But as you go from the B tier and also into the C tier, you know, you're very limited in terms of these options being placed on these teams. So they're more defined into their role, which means either not as splashable or only there for like a specific job, right? And that pretty much is what we have here in the C tier, right? The niche tier. Now, again, I always say C tier does not mean bad. It just means this Pokemon is good at one thing and one thing only, and outside of that job, it just doesn't excel right now given the format. So you can win a lot of tournaments with C tier Pokemon because they define something in your team that your team is lacking that makes all the difference in propelling your squad to the top in a matchup that maybe you're struggling against, but can solve that with just one Pokemon in particular. You're not going to bring these to every single game, right? Because they're not as strong and not as dominant as some of the other options over here. But the games that you do bring them, they will have a big impact, okay? And then after that, these are just the don't use tiers. They're not really relevant in our regulationH meta as of this moment, but that's okay because, you know, you can't use everything, right? That's why we call it a meta. There are things that are very strong, there are things that are like kind of strong, and then there are things that are very niche, and then there are things that are just like YouTube content material, right? They just don't have a role right now in the given format. Okay, so that being said, now let's go ahead and let's start moving things up and down, and then we'll go with our final thoughts and see just where we are exactly right now towards the end of this format. All right, so we'll look at our S tier and see if things can stay where they are or do things need to move down. So over here, we have Sneasel, Kingambit, Rillaboom, Goldengo, Arkeladon, and Amoonguss. This is where we last left them off on November 5th. So I think Sneasel obviously stays here in the S tier, very meta defining, obviously, you know, the last 2 months, especially. regulationH, if I had to put a Pokemon to represent it, it's Sneasel's on the poster board immediately, right? Although it did not crack the 50% usage for the first time in almost 2 months. In the last regional, it was like in the mid 40s there, so that was very interesting in itself. So we'll have to see what that looks like in Toronto and see if that is exactly where it finishes, but still it is still within the S tier, of course. Big burst damage, you get fake out pressure, you have the coaching sets, obviously, you even have the Psychic Seed, Terra Dark Throat Chop set, against the psychic shenanigans. Sometimes you'll even have the niche grassy seed idea, right? So overall, like lots of different ways to play the Sneasler, but it's still like very good and very strong, very fast. A King Gambit, I think this is one where we have to drop it back down to the A tier. So no longer once was the S3, let me rephrase it, no longer the S tier threat it once was for the first 2.5 months of the format. It has been declining the last couple of weeks or so. And now, if you saw the results from the last region, it didn't even crack 20% usage in day 2. And it makes a lot of sense because this guy is rising again, right? The Blood Moon Ursaluna, that's one reason. And, for that, again, you can just click a super effective ground move into that. The other bear, regular Ursaluna, also has risen a lot. So, King Gambit kind of struggles against both of those a little bit. So because of that, people are looking elsewhere in terms of options. So, but it's still very, very good. It can still get top 8 results at any kind of region, just not anywhere near the usage or threat it once was towards the middle portion of the format. Rillaboom here also has experienced a bit of a decline, but not as much as King Gambit. And I don't want to drop Rillaboom down to the A tier just yet. I still think it's like quite good. I don't think it's fallen off as much as Gambit. And I still think, within the S tier is still okay. Like I could even put it like in the low S tier, right? But again, Fake Out Pressure, Grassy Glide, Assault Vest, Terrifier, very solid into like the Sun teams too. And the ground coverage, high horsepower, has overtaken U-Turn as that last 4th move slot there. So I think Rillaboom can stay here in the S tier, but albeit low S tier. Amoonguss, very, very strong right now. And, you saw it in the last regional. Incineroar and Amoonguss were like the king in terms of VGC backbones. And Incineroar has risen a lot more to the point where it did overthrow Sneasler for #1 usage. And it's amazing how Incineroar, in the beginning of the format, was like low 20% usage, and now all of a sudden has doubled that nearly, and where it's now almost in the 50 percentile and has surpassed Sneasler as #1 usage. So we'll move Incineroar up when we get a chance, as soon as we talk a little bit more about the A tier, but I just want to finish out the S tier first. Goldango still very good. Again, very aggressive. Nasty Plot sets, Choice Scarf sets, Choice Spec sets. Either way, very splashable on a lot of different teams. We've seen this on Porygon Balance teams. We've seen this on, Doug teams or Dragonite and Ursaluna. We've seen this on Hyper Offensive teams, on Trick Room teams. Goldango can be used on pretty much almost every single team. And it does so much damage and it creates a lot of pressure. And, for all the more reason to keep it here in the S tier. Arkeladon also, the Arc Rain has so many different variations right now. I can think of at least 8 different Arkeladon Rain variations. And even then, without the Pelipper, you can still use this thing. Power Herb sets with, Thunderbolt, Terra Electric are a thing. You could do Sturdy and Stalwart now. It's not just all about the stamina sets. Very, very good Pokemon, great stats. And you can even use this in Regulation G too. So stay tuned for that. But other than that, again, still staying within the S tier. Same, again, we talked about Amoonguss here. Great Pokemon in Trick Room. Great redirection support. Spore Pressure is annoying. 3 turns of sleep. It's bulky. It can take a hit. It can break Sash if you give this a Rocky Helmet. And it can heal you because you have Pollen Puff. I don't really need to talk about Amoonguss. This thing has been around for many years. Okay, so it's always going to stay within this S tier. Now, it did see a little bit of a decline within Regulation G, but it did pick back up towards the end. So I still think it'll stay that way. All right, now as we go down here into the A tier, so right away, I do want to put Incineroar up here into the S tier. I think this is exactly where it belongs. Again, now that Dragonite has risen so much, right? And along with Sneasler and Goldango, Incineroar looks really good here. Look at this. Dragonite, Goldango, Sneasler, Rillaboom. Incin does very well against a lot of these Pokemon. It gives you positioning, with U-turn or, parting shot. It cripples the opponent, with the Intimidate Pressure, along with the parting shot, as we just said. You get knockoff, you get to remove a key item there. And now people are running the Mirror Herb sets where now you can steal the coaching boost, right? And become super bulky and not even have to worry about giving King Gambit Defiant, because you can copy that attack boost, and now all of a sudden Flare Blitz that normally would not KO King Gambit will now KO King Gambit because you have the Mirror Herb item on it now. So Incineroar found a new toy besides the safety goggles, and as a result, you can bring this up into the S tier. So after this, then we look at Garchomp, then we look at Dragapult. I think Pult can drop down to like high B tier. I still think it's very solid within the A tier, but just recently, I don't see the same results that it once was getting back then. So I kind of want to just drop it into like the high B tier. But Garchomp has seen a little bit of resurgence. It did drop quite a bit, right? And that was because of Scale Shot D-Knight. But with Garchomp now taking a little bit of an increase, I still think we can put this in like the low A tier. I won't put it higher than D-Knight, obviously, but the stuff with like Talonflame, you can Earthquake, you can have the ideas with Goldango as a Dragon Fairy Steel combination at the same time. So I still think Garchomp can get the job done within the format. And then after this, then you have some other options here with Pelipper, which is still like really, really good, right? Pelipper, again, very dominant range setter. And same thing with Tyranitar. Like both of these setters are very good, and especially Tyranitar. Like Tyranitar was very successful in the last regions. There were quite a few Tyranitar teams, not just like Kamo Tyranitar Sand teams, but again, you have the advantage over stuff like Charizard Sun teams. You can change weather against the Archelidon Rain and do very well against Pelipper. You can change weather onto the Torkoal and then have Rock Slide into that. And then again, knock off pressure, removing key items just like Incineroar. Terra Flying is also really solid against Sneasler at the same time. It's bulky with that Assault Vest, so you can take a lot of these special attacks. So T-Tar, I think, is on its way, for having a very, very good standout performance in Toronto. If I had to like play a weather team, I definitely do like Tyranitar. And then you start going into the Porygon balance team. So Porygon, again, like really strong Trick Room setter just because it's super bulky with that Eviolite. And then partnered with like the physical Ursaluna, also like a very strong archetype. Incineroar, Amoonguss, Porygon to Ursaluna. That's like your key Porygon to Trick Room balance core. Very successful right now as an archetype. Again, Terra Blast, Terra Fighting for the King Gambit matchup has been really good. Ice Beam coverage for the Dragonite. And then Ursaluna also doing relatively well. Just facade damage with Earthquake and Headlong Rush. Very strong into Incineroar, Goldango, Sneasler, and Archelidon. Like so many ground weaknesses, right? Which is also why Garchomp, started to rise back yet again. Without question, staying here in the A tier. Annihilate doesn't need the Mousehold here to stay within the A tier. That's why I put it ahead of the Mousehold even back then in November. Like this thing is more flexible. It has like focus sash sets with coaching. It can do safety goggles. It can with the drain punch bulk up sets, right? With Rage Fist at the same time. You can do spell tag still, and just anti-intimidate defiant stuff. Really, really strong. And then you can do coaching, with your Annihilate. And that's the one advantage that it has over Sneasler. They both have coaching, but the typing, right? You can't fake out the Annihilate. You can fake out the Sneasler. You're forced to Terra Ghost the Sneasler if you don't want to get faked out. But the Annihilate doesn't really have to worry about that. And you also have Defiant, right? So you can also be strong yourself and stop Incineroars from trying to intimidate your own Dragonite, if you partner the Annihilate and the D-Knight together, which is what we did for our Global Challenge teams, right? Volcarona, excellent win condition, by the way. Quiver Dance is still very strong. Covert Cloak, Terra Blast, Terra Fairy, also very good. Again, with the Covert Cloak set, you're very strong into the Sneasler matchup. A little bit weak, physically, obviously, but you can compensate for that by just having redirection and having screen setup, or even having Intimidate on your team. So Volcarona is still like okay, and it's still like very solid as a win con in general. Quiver Dance, Giga Drains are really strong. Quiver Dance, Heat Wave also very good, and then obviously the Terra Blast, Terra Fairy, very solid. Then your Tailwind setters, so Whimsicott and Talonflame, the king of your hyper offensive team. So look at this, like Talonflame, Ursaluna, and Indeedee, or you can do Whimsicott, Indeedee, and Blood Moon Ursaluna. All right, they're very strong in terms of like dealing a ton of pressure, or creating a ton of pressure and dealing a lot of damage, because you have like Tailwind Expanding Force plays, or Tailwind Blood Moon plays, Tailwind Hyper Voice plays. Either way, they both fulfill like a similar role. Just some of the tech choices are a little bit interesting, but the Talonflame sometimes now are going for these dual wing beats over Brave Bird, so you can break Sneasler Focus Sash. So still staying within the A tier seems appropriate. Whimsicott, obviously Whimsicott has like 10 different moves he could do. Encore, Taunt, right? These are all very, very solid moves. And just even the niche fake tier set with Arkeladon and even the Blood Moon is also like relatively solid. So I think all of these Pokemon here in the A tier, they stay where they are. The only newcomer was like the Gambit, and I'm not moving anything down. I already moved the Incineroar up, and that's all I need to do in regards to that. Now down here in the B tier, like I said, we did drop Dragapult down here into the high B tier. I still think that's appropriate. Again, the fastest meta relevant Mon right now, controls a lot of speed tiers in terms of investing EVs. But I don't think it's just quite near the A tier threat that it once was towards like the beginning of October. Baxcalibur, Como. These are two dragons that always find a way to make day 2 in these regionals. They're very good. Again, obviously Baxcalibur and Sneasler, the coaching combinations, with the Icicle Spears and the Scale Shots have been really good for Baxcalibur. Como has 2 sets to play. Either the Iron Defense Body Press set, or you can do the Clanger Soul Clanger Scales stuff, and then the pieces that you put around it, either like Fake Out Pressure with screens with the Ninetales, or Redirection with the Electabuzz and Magmar. Also very, very solid. Sinistra is a great partner with it. Whatever set you want to use with it. But Como looking really good as we head towards the end of Regulation H. The fighting coverage is great because a lot of the main threats are also weak to fighting. Like, again, Incin, Arkeladon, King Gambit, P2, the Ursaluna. These are all fighting weak, right? Even the Tyranitar at the same time. So Como found its way, with that body press set. But also, just the Clangorous Soul set. Again, just being able to sweep teams after like 1 or 2 of those is very, very solid in general. Ninetales here, another good weather setter. Again, just providing screen support. Making your entire team bulky is quite nice. You're also very fast, which sometimes is a little bit disadvantageous, right? Because the slower weather setter would take away your weather. But you do get stuff like Icy Wind. You still get, Encore. And you also have Freeze Dry, which is really good against a lot of these Pokemon. So, and you're a Fairy type. So, you don't have to worry about Scale Shot on the D-Knight. You can pressure it, right? Because you are also an Ice type too. The Primarina has seen, decline since the beginning of the format. And it's still, declining, but still very good overall. Like Water Fairy typing, again, solid. You're great into D-Knight. You still have Haze, right? And then you can also deal good water damage against a lot of this stuff like Incin, the Ursalunas, the Tyranitars, the Talonflames. They don't want to be taking these water type attacks. So Primarina will still float within this high B tier as we head into the ending portion of Regulation H. The Magmar and the Electabuzz, these are also very good. I almost want to put them in the... You know what? I will put them here. Actually, I think I'll put Electabuzz a little bit more than the Magmar. Electabuzz is an excellent redirector. I think it's just a little bit better than the Magmar. First of all, you're faster, right? Which means you can outspeed stuff like Charizard and click Electro Web. You have Taunt also, fast Taunt user. And with Vital Spirit and Electric typing, you have immunity against 2 of Sneasler's status inflictions. You can't get paralyzed, and you also can't go to sleep. So that's also pretty good for Buzz here. You are weak to ground, so you do have to watch out for the Rising Blood Moon stuff, as well as like regular Ursaluna, but it's still a very solid redirector. And the Magmar here, also, same idea. Again, just, good damage into steel types also. Like, again, stuff like Corviknight that was rising for a hot minute. Magmar looks really good there. And, just clear Smog access to remove stuff like Dondozo buffs, or even just other setup Pokemon in general, like even Volcarona or Swords Dance ideas or Scale Shots, the speed buffs. You can remove that with Clear Smog, so Magmar has that niche at the same time. Vivian here, very, very good with these P2 Ursaluna teams. That's why I put it so high. You have access to Rage Powder also, just like Amoonguss, and you have Tailwind support, and either Garchomp or Ursaluna can Earthquake next to the Vivian. So overall, really solid option here. And then the Delphox here, I think Delphox, I think I'm gonna drop it 1 tier a little bit. Like it was doing relatively well, like for a couple weeks, but I don't think it's nowhere near where it once was back in like early November. But it's still like very good. Strong expanding force user, strong fire type, not really caring about Intimidate. You're faster than Garchomp too, so you can potentially KO it with an expanding force, depending on the situation. But Delphox still like a really solid option here. And then Salamence here, also finding some niche play, not as much as Kamo or Back Scalloper, but can be played on some of those rain teams, especially with Hurricane and Tailwind support. And you are also another Intimidate option, but it's relatively niche, but it's still like very solid overall on some of those teams. So I still kept it there in the high B tier. Solo Daozo, right? Not the Tatsugiri stuff, but Solo Dondozo. You'll find it more on those Sneasel balance teams. Listen, Yawn is annoying, okay? Yawn is annoying, and the Niche Fissure will give you an out, but it's just the bulk that Dondozo has and Unaware, right? That's the main thing. Like, that's also why Clefable is also up here. Unaware is busted, okay? And the fact that you can ignore those stat boosts is amazing, and protect your allies and not really care so much about the damage they may inflict because you just ignore it altogether, right? And over here, then you have this Paldean Taurus, another niche Intimidator, but still like also pretty good, yeah, especially if you can put this on those Arkelid and Rain teams. I think low B tier is correct. I don't think it's as high of a B tier as I thought it may be. I thought it would progress a little bit, but it hasn't. So I still think it's a little bit higher than the niche options, but nowhere near some of these guys in the high B tier. Mirko, really good. I think it's even risen just a little bit, but like Tailwind and Haze are very strong. You also have manual weather control with Sunny Day or Rain Dance. We've seen both. And you have the niche Quash option, but no one's using that as much. And you still have Foul Play, right? So Mirko really good. Torkoal, those Torkoal teams, whether it's like Hard Trick Room with Indeedee, Hatterene, Torkoal, and Ursaluna, or those Charizard Sun teams with the Eject Pack Torkoal set, where it can also be supported with Helping Hand. So a little bit more flexibility with that. You're the slowest weather setter. You have Eruption Spam, right, for sweeping potential. So I think high B tier is still like okay for this. Then you have these guys down here. I still think all of this stays exactly where they need to be. Typhlosion, a lot of offensive pressure with Eruption on those, you know, Whimsicott teams with Ursaluna and or Indeedee. Corviknight also very strong as like another endgame win condition because you have recovery, you have bulk up. Whether you're running the power trip set or not, up to you, but Mirror Armor is really good. Steel Flying typing. Blood Moon Ursaluna has a hard time breaking it because you can't click a ground move and you resist the normal move. So looks really good in that matchup. Gallade also, you know, great into, you know, King Gambit and Incineroar, especially if you have the clear amulet. You can crit things, especially with Knife Slash and Sacred Sword. You ignore defense boosts, so coaching doesn't really matter, right? So the Gallade looking really good on those Trick Room teams as well. Sinistra also, it did crack that top 12 graphic in that last regional. Yeah, again, Trick Room, speed control. You have Rage Powder, just like Amoonguss. You have healing with not just Hospitality, but Life Dew. And you have Matcha Gotcha, which again is more healing. And you have the chance to burn, right? Which is very punishing for some of these physical attackers. Hydreigon was a call at the time back in November. And it looks like we got it right. So I had a feeling this might be used a little bit because at the time the Zard Sun teams were rising. And the Size Spam shenanigans was getting a little bit out of hand. So I thought something like Hydreigon could be used, and we called it right. It was one of those niche options that we spotlighted in the video prior to a regional, and it's nice to see that we did get this one right. Again, Levitate, can't click a ground move into it, and you know, you are weak to sneeze or close combat, but you do have Tailwind on it, and you can have Snarl Pressure, which is very damaging to Goldengo and Arkelidid. And then the Dragon typing makes it so that you're able to resist a lot of the Torkoal Charizard attacks. So, and because of that, you can also pair this, and we have paired it with the regular Ursaluna over here, because you can Earthquake next to it. So, and then that means you can also click Tailwind, and then you can make this a fast bear, right? Which has been successful as of late. Cerulege, I think Cerulege is also like a very, very good Pokemon. I don't think it's like, is it high B tier or is it like low B? I think again the bulk up set was good. And you know, the coaching stuff with Sneasel was also good. I think I'm going to put it in the low B tier. Actually no, I'm gonna leave it high up here. Again, Flash Fire is really good. Okay, so it gives you some leeway against Torkoal stuff, and at the same time, you know, Bitter Blade recovery is very strong. You have Ghost Pressure into stuff like Goldengo, for example, or like another Dragapult, for instance. So I'll still leave it in the bottom part of the high B tier. I think that's okay. Ferrograph also has started to see a little bit more exploration, in recent weeks. So what it once was down here, but now I can put it back a little bit up higher here. I think Hyper Voice spam is really good. Again, denying priority moves. You still have Trick Room for, the Ursaluna over here. Ursaluna, Ferrograph have always been really good. So if this thing rises, then this thing will also rise too. And now that Instant and Rillaboom are like both in the S tier altogether, I think there's more importance for Ferrograph to deny, the Grassy Glides and the Fake Outs in essence, right? So I do think high B tier will be correct for the Ferrograph here. The Zoroark, listen, this thing always finds a way, whether it's on those Trick Room teams or whether it's on those hyper offensive teams. The shenanigans with Illusion is crazy. It does a lot of damage. I don't think I'm going to put it here, though. I do think this one does belong in the low B tier. It's a little bit frail, okay? So, and sometimes you can play around this and you can kind of guess depending on what they have. But the surprise factor is what really propels it to the top there. But I still think low B is correct here. We didn't spotlight Grimmsnarl here. So Grimmsnarl screen support, again, Spirit Break pressure. A lot of things don't want to be taking that. You still have access to Taunt and Fake Out. Lots of different sets for Grimmsnarl, but the screens that you get with it with Prankster, of course, are the main selling points for Grimmsnarl. I still think high B tier is correct. You'll see it a lot on those Arkelid Rain teams, or with those Maushold Ape teams, or even with Volcarona, it works. And also with those Doug teams with Dragonite, Ursaluna, and Goldango, like you'll see some Grimmsnarl play as well. If you don't see the Ninetales altogether, but yeah, I think our B tier is also correct here. So we don't need to move anything up, and we've already dropped stuff down. So yeah, I think the high B tier is exactly where it needs to be. All right, now we'll look at the lower B tier here. So we'll kick things off with Glimmora. Listen, Glimmora pretty good on those Dondozo teams. Again, just lots of poison damage going around, where you put things in range for Dondozo and Tatsugiri to clean up. Otherwise, you can always find Glimmora on Tailwind stuff, like with Talonflame flicking Tailwind, and then just, doing a whole bunch of damage with like Meteor Beam and then Sludge Bomb and Earth Power stuff. I think Glimmora is also like really solid with Tyranitar teams. We have seen that a little bit. So again, you definitely appreciate the Sand because of the special defense boost. And then after this, the Armarouge. Okay, so like Armarouge, Hattering's a little bit better, but like Armarouge still has a niche too. Like Flashfire, again, is still like solid. You still have Expanding Force shenanigans, just like Delphox and the Hatterene. You know what? I'm going to put all three of these together. But you also get Heat Wave Pressure, just like the Delphox, but the Delphox is faster, right? Which means you don't really play the Delphox in the Trick Room idea, but you play the Armarouge instead. And Flashfire, like we said, is pretty solid. And you also get Wide Guard too. The Hatterene also, again, same thing. You have strong Expanding Force, but you're super slow, right? Which is great in Trick Room. And then at the same time, you're a fairy. So, you don't really have to worry about Scale Shot, and you can deal damage right back with Dazzling Gleam. So you can make them think twice about their Dragonite there, or force it to Terra, right? Mimikyu, also Mimikyu pretty good in this category. Life Orb Mimikyu goes really, really well. Just strong Shadow Claw damage or Shadow Sneak, Play Rough damage, good solid Trick Room setter. Disguise is also a thing, but again, not nearly as great as something like a Porygon 2, right? Metagross, I feel like we've tried, we were a little bit ambitious with this thing. I think dropping it to the C tier is appropriate. With the Assault Vest, it was like pretty okay with the Sneasler coaching stuff, but the Gambit was just ultimately the better option, but it was still at least viable, right? After that, Palafin, same thing. Like, it's not nearly as bad as the C tier options, but it can still get the job done. And we did see like a top Palafin result. We even featured that team with Hydreigon too a couple of videos ago, but we just didn't bring the Palafin, right? Not that we needed it, but you still get access to Haze, and you're still a strong hard hitter, with Jet Punch, right? And you still have Wave Crash. So, it may be not like, Primarina at the time, but Palafin can still get the job done if you put it in the right position. So I think those tools make it so that you can still like use it, right? Low B tier I think is okay with it. Hisuian Arcanine, we've seen this a little bit with the Talonflame and the the Indeedee along with the Electabuzz here. Again, another fast Intimidator that you can also deal like pretty decent damage with rock coverage and fire coverage altogether with extreme speed. So I do think that kind of Arcanine is also really solid. You can also do like Assault Vest Arcanine. You don't have to necessarily commit the band set. I think Mirror Herb Arcanine is also really solid. That has been tried already, just like with the regular Arcanine, which we'll get into in a second. But Mirror Herb is also like a pretty good item right now. Meowscarada also relatively niche on some of those hyper offensive teams, but again, dark typing and grass, a lot more weaknesses, but again, you can crit, you're pretty fast, you have access to Trick Room, you can just use a Focus Sash ideally, you have knockoff pressure, Protean, it still makes it so that you can do some decent damage, not bad. Excadrill, not nearly as high as Tyranitar, obviously, because you need the T-Tart to like be pretty good. Usually this is just run like a Focus Sash, but it is a Sand Abuser, right? And you do get ground coverage, which a lot of these Pokemon hate. So again, I think low B tier is correct for it. Gastrodon, Hisuian Lilligant, and the Paldean Taurus, also relatively solid. Gastrodon, again, with Storm Drain, pretty good into the water attacks from something like Primarina or Pelipper. You get to soak up Electroshock damage. You have Yawn Pressure. You have ground coverage into a lot of these Pokemon. The only thing is Gastrodon, outside of that ability and the typing, it just doesn't really exert that much pressure. And for that reason, I think low B tier is correct. It's pretty niche, but when we used it, it was okay. Flamigo, very good on those P2 balance teams with the Mungus. Again, Scrappy, very good. You can't get intimidated. You can hit ghost types. So if things want to Terra Ghost in front of your fighting type attacks, it's not going to work, right? And with the Sash, you have a lifeline and you have close combat, which means you can KO stuff like King Gambit and Incineroar, right? And even the Arkeladon too. So this Flamigo has been great with these P2 Ursaluna teams. And you also get access to Wyguard too, if I understand this correctly, right? The Chandelure is also one of our favorite niche options because, again, you have access to Haze and Trick Room. You deal big damage with Shadow Ball and Heat Wave, and you have Flash Fire. So Chandelure, we like it just as much as the Cerulege here. So if you want to use it, go for it. It has had a couple of regional results already. So again, not as much, of course. It's still like somewhat niche, but I still like it. Like Flash Fire with those coverages and those tech moves, give it a real good niche for certain teams. Charizard Jump Pluff stuff. Okay, so yeah, I do think with that P2 stuff, again, it's still pretty solid along with Torkoal. A ton of pressure. The Jump Pluff with Tailwind and Sunny Day and Sleep Powder, it's annoying, okay? It is relatively annoying to deal with, and Manual Sunny Day. So yeah, do with it with what you will. Zard has found its niche in Scarlet and Violet. Dynamax, we thought it would put it out of its misery, but Zard has still found a way to be relevant in this type of meta. In the sun, it just does so much damage, whether you're Specs or whether you're Scarf. The sun solar power combination is just very, very strong, and you're a base speed 100 Pokemon, so that helps. Milotic has had some results as of late, so the competitive boost, right? There's a lot more Incineroar, which means Milotic is pretty good, and with the Safety Goggles set, that means you're also pretty good into Amoonguss too. So Safety Goggles Milotic shutting down pretty much the instant Amoonguss backbone there, and that's pretty cool. We saw this on that Sand team in the previous regional, and that's really its purpose, to deter the instant Amoonguss stuff and take advantage if they do bring it, because Scald is punishing. Same with Icy Wind, and you still get Haze too. So Milotic finding its niche late in this format. The Hisuian Samurott, you get to set hazards, right, which is pretty dangerous. You break Sash, you break Multiscale. That's like one of the selling points, and your dark typing, great into the Size Spam shenanigans. So finding its niche there. Then after that, Garganical also getting some results. Stealth Rock, right? So Stealth Rock Garganical with the Maranga Berry from Mr. Pengy makes it pretty annoying. And the Sneeze is going to have a hard time with this because of Purifying Salt. And at the same time, you're super bulky. You have endgames with like Recover, Leftovers, and Protect. And then they're just losing out to the Salt Cure damage. Garganical is here, okay? And it's here to stay. Palmont, again, unless you're outside of those Dondozo teams, you don't really see the Palmot. But when it does do well on those teams, like you really feel it. Blaziken coaching stuff with Sash, again, that was another thing that you could do with this besides the Fire Pledge stuff. But your best coaching options are, the Sneasler and the Ape there, which is why I put the Blaziken down here. But the one thing that you get that these two don't get is Speed Boost, and that you have to be aware of, okay? And after that, Gengar, also another cool option here. Icy Wind and Haze and Shadow Ball, okay? And, you're fast. You also get access to Trick Him if you really want to take advantage. I've always been fond of Gengar here in this slot here. I don't think it's as bad as some of these guys here. Not that these guys are bad. That's not what I meant, but I still think it's a little bit higher in usage than some of these other options here. But yeah, overall, I think our B tier is exactly where it needs to be. I don't think I'm moving anything up or down after this. I think everything from S, A to high B and low B so far is correct. All right, now let's look at the C tier over here. See if we can move anything up here, or maybe even just move stuff down. But Executor, the Egg, yeah, I think that's correct with it. Again, expanding Force, Chlorophyll, where you can take advantage of the Torkoal on the team and really put some pressure, especially with Seed Powder stuff. I think C tier is correct. We have seen some Politoed teams, especially the Choice Specs Politoed sets on Arkeladon. And sometimes you have even seen Pelipper and Politoed successfully on the same team at the regional level. So I'm not surprised there, but again, Parasong and Haze are still very useful tools. The Volbeat stuff with Illumise, yeah, you'll still get some of them, clicking prankster stuff, Tailwind, Rain Dance, shenanigans. The Yan Mega, I think I could put this up in the low B tier. I think, with like Vivian stuff, like again, another bug flying type that you can Earthquake next to, does pretty good into Sneasler, has that speed boost potential. I think low B tier is a little bit more correct with where we're at right now. Kilowattrel, I also think low B tier. It has had some success lately with those Tyranitar Excadrill teams, that Choice Spec set from Mr. Toller Web, and then even at the regional afterwards, it also has had strong results. Again, faster than Sneasler. You have that Tailwind if you need to go for it. Competitive, very good ability. Now that Incineroar is like really high in usage, again, you can deter the Intimidates onto the Excadrill and the Tyranitar. You can Earthquake next to Kilowattrel too. You have Discharge potential if you want to do that. I think low B tier is correct. Gyarados, again, we just featured a Gyarados team. Rank 1, right? So I think C tier also is correct there. The Drift Blimp stuff, again, so many things it has going for it. Whether you want to run the Grassy Seed or the Psychic Seeds with either Indeedee or Rillaboom. And then you have Tailwind, you have Strength Sap, you have Will-O-Wisp. You have Acrobatics that is really strong, right? So the Driplim is pretty hard to kill, honestly. So I do like it, and I think the C tier is correct here. The Galarian Weezing, again, also, whether you want the Neutralizing Gas or the Misty Terrain, it has a good use there. But sometimes it can feel like a dead slot, so it just gets exposed eventually. But I do think C tier is correct. The Gliscor, right? We featured this in a couple of videos already. Very good against Sneasler, especially that Poison Heal set with the Toxic Orb. And, again, Ground Flying, also very good against the Electroshot shenanigans. And you can put pressure right back into some of these guys because, again, you do have ground coverage for you. So I think that makes sense. Toadscruel, Spore shenanigans. We've already seen that in a few regionals already. Sylveon had a couple of results lately, but I still think overall you have some better options with your Fairy type. I think Volcarona is your best Fairy type when it becomes a Terra option, right? But after that, Weavile. Yo, we're going to put this up. We've been pretty high on Weavile, right? Again, Fake Out Pressure, Icy Wind. You're faster than Sneasler. You have Knockoff. You have Triple Axle to get past Focus Sash stuff. You have a lot going. You got Beat Up. You can beat up and Annihilate or an Arkeladon. So some pretty successful teams, as of late with Weavile. I think low B tier to get it out of the C tier is actually correct here. After that, Bronzong also, we featured that team from Jonathan Duran. I still think it's C tier at most. Again, Levitate and that Steel typing, just like Corviknight, kind of just sits in front of the Blood Moon. And even the regular Ursaluna can't really do a whole lot there. But, good C tier option for Bronzong at long last is what I meant to say. Boo Boo Key's also really good. Setting screens, Misty Terrain to stop Sneasler shenanigans and do less dragon type damage overall. I still think it's pretty decent. And then after that, I think everything else is just relatively C tier-ish, right? I don't think I'm going to move anything up or down. I think these are exactly where they need to be. Blastoise, again, the water spout stuff with Pelipper, also pretty cool. Yeah, again, like, oh, the Orthworm. Oh, yeah, let me speak about Orthworm for a bit. So, in the Premier Ball League challenge, like from Taiwan, I believe, we did see a couple of Orthworm teams there. And again, another cool niche. Steel type that can absorb ground coverage. So that kind of sits in front of the Ursaluna stuff. You can also put this with Garchomp, heal it back up. Body Press, really good into some of these options. I think Orthworm could be seen in Toronto. I'm not going to lie. So don't sleep on it. I do think Orthworm will have a day 2 result in Toronto. Mark my words. Orthworm will make day 2 at Toronto. Okay. After that, I have seen a couple of Mienshao teams. Again, can't intimidate this thing. You can close combat Incineroar, and you have fake out pressure on your own. So that's pretty cool. And then after that, I really wish the stamina horse over here was good. I've always had, like, I kind of tried to believe in it, you know, because our Arcaladin also has stamina. So I thought maybe this thing could also do something, especially in Trick Room. It just hasn't really gotten its footing. But maybe that has to do with more being unexplored than, you know, not being like great. Maybe if someone took the time to explore, I keep forgetting this name, Mudsdale, then I think maybe it might have a decent play in Regulation H. But, you know, we're almost out of time there. But after that, you know, we've seen the niche Glaceon teams with the Ninetales. I don't think that anything like that is terribly amazing. But yeah, I think we're okay here. Poliwrath, again, a couple of results on those rain teams. Fighting coverage has been good. Anything down here? Oh, okay. I guess we can move Beartick up. Some people are trying this thing on the Pelipper Arc Rain teams as a Swift Swim user over the Basculegion. I think that's worse, but it is playable. Alright. Fine. I will put the Superior here in the C tier. It does have some decent bulk. It does have some screens ideas, but other than that, you know, very, very niche. The Abomasnow, same thing. Again, that regional team from Brandon Davis. Okay, we'll give it that. Grass coverage, pretty cool into the Ursalunas, I guess, right? Anything else that maybe I can even move up here? Oh, yeah, the Arboliva. Ladies and gentlemen, Arboliva has entered the meta. I don't know where I'm going to put this in. I'm just going to say this is C tier. So Seed Sour, again, when it takes chip damage, it gets the set terrain, and you don't have to switch it out. That's the main idea with Arboliva over something like Rillaboom. So on that team, it was Scarf, Pelipper, right, with Surf. So that means you get to hit your Arboliva, proc the terrain, and now you can stay in. You don't have to switch it out and be out of position. And that was the main selling point there. And the Assault Vest came in really clutch with that. So, and of course, it's good in Trick Room too. So the Arboliva having a niche right now in Regulation H, and more people are playing it in Limitless tournaments for good reason. So nice to see Arboliva enter this meta. I think it's pretty cool that it has. After that, anything else here that I can move up or down? Not that down, because this is as good as it's gonna get here. But after this, let's see. Can I find anything to push up here? No, I don't think so. The Slowking, nah, I'm gonna leave that there in the don't use tier. Ariados, Furret, Umbreon. No, this is not a restricted format. We don't need Umbreon just yet. Yeah, a lot of these guys, yeah, nothing. I don't think anything is moving up here. The Rotoms can stay. The regular Lilligant can stay. Yeah, I think this is it. Yeah, we're not okay. The Dancer stuff maybe, but nah, I don't think that's enough. We have the other Toxtricity up there. Yeah, this is it. Yeah, I don't think we move anything up. I think after that was it. That was the last one we needed to move up. Arboliva, you know, taking the cake there. So now let's recap everything and see just where exactly are we. All right, so now let's try and recap everything as a whole. So obviously your Sneasel balance stuff, that's always going to be solid. Okay, Goldango, very, very good. Arcaladin Rain with Pelipper, again, another one of the top archetypes besides stuff like Sneasel. Incineroar, Amoonguss defensive backbones. You're going to see this a lot as we close things out, and you're going to see this in the restricted format as well. Again, Incineroar, Amoonguss defensive backbone, super good. Rillaboom will come in where it needs to help, again, with Fake Out, Grassy Glide, Woodhammer stuff. And then after this, the Doug ideas, right? Dragonite, Ursaluna, Goldengo. That's also going to be really solid, especially with Annihilate too, with the coaching stuff. That you're going to see a lot of Volcarona endgame win cons. That's also going to be good. Partnered with stuff like Electabuzz and Fake Outs, you know, to help set it up. Maybe even with screen support, that'll also help it, depending on whether it's Ninetales or the Grimmsnarl. King Gambit, even though it has been declining in usage, it's still like a pretty good overall solid Pokemon, especially against the Rising Incineroar stuff. But again, Mirror Herb is really good for the Instant right now. Tyranitar Sand teams, okay, has risen a little bit with Chomp. Let me put them together a little bit. But even without the Chomp or Excadrill, like Tyranitar in itself is a really good weather. And I still think you're going to see a lot more of them in Toronto. The P2 balance stuff, like we've already talked about with the Ursaluna and the Incineroar and Amoonguss, that's going to be still relatively solid. The Blood Moon hyper offensive stuff, okay? So like Talonflame and the Indeedee, okay? Clicking Expanding Force along with the Blood Moon Ursaluna, right? And D9, and sometimes with the Electabuzz too. That's going to be really solid overall. And then Whimsicott Tailwind abuse, right? Along with Talonflame, or sometimes not two together, but you know what I mean. Whimsicott taking the place of a Tailwind abuser, like the Talonflame can still do that. And then after that, you know, your B tier stuff. So Hydreigon teams are looking pretty solid. Magmar is still a pretty good redirector. Combo Baxcalibur teams, right? That they'll also be, you know, you'll also find some niche there amongst the day 2 teams, of course. Regular Indeedee still pretty good. Okay, Follow Me, super bulky. Trick Room Setter, Mousehold also still pretty good with Ape, still very solid. Cerulege and Typhlosion, relatively niche, but again, still pretty good in what you need it to do. The Torkoal teams, whether it's Charizard Sun or just like Hard Trick Room, they've had some good results overall. And the Corviknight on some of these sand teams are also pretty good, even on non-sand teams, depending on how the team is built. Again, bulk up pressure with Body Press and or Tailwind looks really good. You can sit in front of the Ursalunas because of your typing, so I do like that. Sometimes you'll make some good use out of those Charizard Sun teams. Then the Milotic teams with the T-Tar Sand stuff is also pretty good. But overall, those are your top teams. After that, these are just relatively niche options that you slap on to these teams. Okay, so you got your big 8 to 10 teams, and then these guys are just filling in roles that maybe make a difference in terms of like mirror matchups or how you want to play different squads. Okay, but I think this is where we at with Regulation H. So let's see what happens in Toronto. And if you need a little bit of help, okay, if you're still trying to pick a team and you need help with building, make sure you reach out to us, okay? If you look in the video description below, we have a link to join the channel with the tier 3 sub. And in the same videos, okay, if you look in the comment section, the pinned comment has the same link where you can join with that tier 3 sub. You can book a one-on-one session with me. We can build you a squad the way you want it to be built. We'll hash out the EVs. We'll do a couple test games, and we'll see how it can do in some test tournaments. And then hopefully we can get you best prepared for Toronto moving forward. All right, so sign up for coaching. Again, video description or the pinned comment section has that link. Join the Discord, then you can message me. You can do that right now. Actually, that doesn't cost anything. But once you do join, make sure to reach out and we'll be able to help you out as we deem fit. Okay, that's it for now, folks. We'll be back with another video in the next one. Peace out and have a good one.